that even if President Ruto has to take a plane by himself with a couple of generals and go and pick up Mr. Museveni and go to Khartoum, I think we will lose Sudan as a country. It will affect Juba. If it affects Juba, it will affect northern Kenya. If it affects northern Kenya, the crisis of the state and the market in Africa has now, as the great Malik Shabazz used to say, the chickens have come home to roost.
Well, the call for drafting of young men, as far as the government is concerned, we've not really gotten any latest statistics on how many soldiers so far have lost their lives in this particular war between both sides, from Hemedit and Burhan's side. Why would they really be asking for the drafting of young men? Is it one side that, or the Burhan side is losing and they need to have a revamp?
Dubal, the issue, like Ahmed Hashi just alluded, is much more complex than that. I think that you need to go back in history and then look at the current affairs pitting Russia and Ukraine. Putin did not trust the armed forces to secure his place, so he created the Wagner. Siad Barre created Bonan, and these armed forces that are here were supposed to balance because he could not trust the military to protect him. So you need to take a look at what is happening. What is happening is that Russia is now the biggest arms merchant for the continent of Africa. 35% of all the arms we are buying are from Russia. The China provides 17%, US 10%, France 7%. Where are these arms going? These are extra stockpile. These are vintage Russian war machines which are being poured into Africa. And instead they scoop gold and take back to make Russia wealthy. There is going to be a war. But not a war between China and the US. There's going to be a syndicate war, which is exactly like during the Cold War. That's what we're coming to. So Sudan, I would submit Sudan has the potential to be a failed state because you have Saudi's interest, you have Turkey's interest, you have Russia interest, you have US interest, you have Chinese interest, and everybody else's interest, except the Sudanese. So children are going to fight against children, grown-up going to fight against grown-up. They are going to destroy all the infrastructure using UVA, okay? Not spears and arrows, not guns. They're going to be much more destruction. That is coming. And Egypt is watching. Egypt can be very helpful. Egypt has the largest air force in Africa and one of the highest, well-disciplined military. They're not marching in because they know the consequences of what's coming. And it's going to take a really carefully crafted group of African leaders meeting under OAU and inviting friends around the world, particularly United Nations, need to be very focused in order to bring these people together. The government cannot do without Bunan. They are going to have a joint way of coming together and bringing this government together. Otherwise, a failed state we're looking at in the future.
Just to add to that, do you know, Debal, there's some guy called Al-Shabaab,
yep,
who crept into Mogadishu when there was a failed state in Somalia. Debal, they are awash in the Sahel, these terrorists. If you think that Mogadishu was something crude, you will see the sophistication of the Al-Shabaab in its international sense in Khartoum very soon. Khartoum, and then Juba, and then Nairobi. The security implications my learned senior, I put to you, are not tremendous, they're hegemonic. If we allow the Sudan to fail, that vacuum will be filled by something. It will be filled by some militancy. Jabal, we're playing with fire. This is a very serious problem. And another thing is Sudan is right on the gates of the Red Sea. It borders Ethiopia. Right across is the Gulf countries. Right across is the Middle East. Right here to the south is the most stable country we have, Kenya. Sudan, Jabal, is going to make Somalia look like a storm in a teacup. And I predict to you that in exactly 3 months, the terrorists are going to be in Khartoum. They're already planning on how to get there. Then will the Americans stand up and put up a flag and say, oh my God, we need to send troops there? Do we need to occupy the Sudan? Was this planned? Was this idea planned to take over the sovereignty of the people of Sudan, the first independent black republic? It was not Ghana, which was the first republic, it's Sudan. They divided it up. And now do they want to occupy it? We have to wake up. We have to wake up and say, assert our African personality and say, we're going to put a stop to this. Where is the AU? We have a rapid response team here in Karen. Nothing is moving.
East Africa
standby force.
Yes, yeah.
This put paid. You know, this what's happening in Sudan is putting paid to whatever kind of vision we have about what to do in our region. And Sudan is part of COMESA. President Sisi in Egypt is sleeping while his brothers are dying in Khartoum. He has the largest army in Africa.
Yes.
Well, this is a dereliction of duties, a dereliction of responsibility.
But what are you insinuating, that he's sleeping and his brothers are dying in Khartoum?
Well, because the same people who are in Egypt are the same people who are in Sudan. They are cousins. The people who are in Egypt and in the Sudan are the same people. They have the same faith. They speak the same language. They have the same history. It is the same country that was divided by the British. It is time, and if the people of Egypt and the government of Egypt believes that the Sudan is going to be okay, they're mistaken, because the first attacks by terrorism will go to Egypt. And there are people in Egypt who have sympathies for these radical groups, Tibal.
But we had Egyptian forces as well who are having a joint drill with the army of...
in 10 days, the Egyptian army could, in 5 days, they could restore order in Khartoum. In just 5 days, Dabal. They'll just send 50,000 troops there and just arrest both of those protagonists. Dabal, the Egyptian army is not a joke. It's huge. It's the biggest of this continent. Probably the top 10 in the world.
That's correct.
And it is not taking action. I don't understand who is the Minister of Security in Egypt, and why he doesn't see the potential of this crisis coming over to Luxor.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that be actually also running over the international laws? I mean, this is a sovereign state. You don't interfere, you as Egyptians...
you know the
at the end of the day.
You know the bar.
It's like Hashi is really calling out that the Egyptians should actually invade and or come
yes, I'm actually saying, just before, I'll give it to my learned senior, the Egyptian military needs to take control of Khartoum and Egypt, and then transition that government and bring back the army and try and put law and order back. This is not the time to put your foot around sovereignty and international law.
Let's just hear from... we are living
Europe
within the ambit of the international law and sovereignty of a country.
But remember Bosnia Herzegovina.
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the war. You remember the role that Europe played. You remember the role that US played. You remember the role that they continue to play. Because the justification for AU is it's not going to be, this thing is not going to be in Sudan. It will spill over to Egypt. And it will spill over to other countries in Africa. And therefore you have the right, if Egyptian can lead the team, but you have a combined African force that need to go there and enforce law.
But Mrowe Medamba, yourself, you've just given a retinue of maybe countries, I should say, who have interests as far as Sudan is concerned right now.
Correct.
And it is multi-layered. It's not just a war that we can see between Hemedti and Burhan. There are confluence of interest from other countries as well. So if we are calling out for Egypt to also intervene in this particular case, do we know also the underlying powers that will also be coming to try and protect the Hemedti side or the Burhan side?
Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Hashi.
The Bal, you legitimacy, okay? There is the sovereign state. Sudan is a sovereign state. Egypt is a sovereign state. But there is agreement with Africa under AOU in order to create peace. Africans can intervene. African country, United Nations can intervene to create peace. The challenge here, Dobal, and this is what I want everybody to watch, is the role the Wagner Group are going to play. These are ruthless people. These are trained to extract goods and services out of the country. And then, so you have Turkey supplying highly sophisticated weapon system, UVA, so that they can attack each other. Then you have Egyptians, and then you have Saudis and their interests. And the US, which is committed to make sure that Russia does not have an anchor in Sudan. And Chinese are also encroaching into this area. So Africa must create a resolution together with the United Nations. Africa cannot sit back. And we know that Egyptians is one of the most disciplined, one of the highly trained, one of the largest armed forces. It is time that Egyptians played a major role in this.
All right, we need to wind up on the Sudan crisis as it is right now and move on to Mali, where the United Nations Security Council unanimously voted, of course, to end